Hello, everyone. This is Gareth from Hardwood Ski and Bike. Wondering if anyone who's out there listening can comment and say whether or not you can hear me. Good here. Okay, sounds like you can hear me. So I'm going to begin here. Now, as some of you know, we did something like this a while ago, shortly after the fire that happened on Christmas Day. So this is our second kick at this. And the purpose is, in essence, just to communicate with everyone and inform you what is happening. And I know you're all curious, and answer any questions as well. So basically what's going to happen here is I'm going to give you an update as to what is going on with regards to the insurance and the building of the chalet and what's coming up this summer. And then I'm going to answer some questions that we have been emailed in advance. And then you'll be free to ask me questions of anything you want at the end. And I'll do my best to answer them. So here we go. I'll start with the update. What's happening and what have we discovered so far? So let's start. There's a few components to this. So I want to start with the rebuild of the chalet. So we're going to call the main chalet, which is where we've had to shut down since the winter because of the fire. That main chalet is comprised of three parts. We're going to call the main entrance building the east wing, the middle building the cafe, and then the west portion is the west wing. So the entire complex is what we call the main chalet, but it's sort of comprised of three different areas that are all connected. The fire started in that middle building, which was the cafe. That building is now gone. It's been removed. It was a complete write-off. There was nothing left of it in essence. And the insurance company has conceded, obviously, that is no good, needs to be rebuilt. And also that the slab on which that middle building sat is also no good. So that's going to need to get replaced. So that's the nature of where we are with that middle building. We'll move over to the west wing. Now that west wing was rebuilt just a couple years ago, so it was built to new code. There were fire separation doors between the cafe and the west wing, so they did their job. They closed when the fire happened, so they saved a lot of that building. There is still smoke damage in that building, as well as water damage. Some structural damage was done to the back of the building from the firefighters. The walls were damaged, the windows are melted. And as well, because of the water damage and the fact that water sat in there for an extended period of time because there was no power in any of those buildings for weeks, there's also mold in the building as well now. So that's what we're dealing with in the west wing. I know if you look at it from the outside, people probably wonder, why can't we go in there? Well, there's lots of reasons we can't go in there. And we have what is called a scope of work. You may hear me speak about that quite a bit today. So a scope of work is what is required to repair the building. So in that west wing, the insurance company did a scope of work in what they thought was required to remediate that building. It took quite a while to get that scope of work from the insurance company. And when we got it, our consultants pointed out many errors in that scope of work, including dimensions were wrong, and it was just grossly inaccurate. So our consultants now have gone ahead and had to do another scope of work, an accurate one. And what happens now is that scope of work needs to get approved by the insurance company before repairs can start. And unfortunately, it's not easy with the insurance company. So we are awaiting an approval to go ahead with that scope of work. If they do not agree with the scope of work we've created, then it will go to an arbitrator, an umpire they call it, if there's a disagreement. So we hope that doesn't happen, but that's where the west wing is sitting right now. We're prepared to with our contractors to start work on it. But in essence, we need permission from the insurance company that they're going to agree with what needs to happen. So that's the west wing side. On to the east wing. The east wing is, where you would come in to the front desk, the retail store, the rentals, the members lounge. That's what we're calling the east wing. This is the biggest question mark in this whole insurance claim. We're not sure if that east wing is salvageable or not. We have asked the insurance company for their scope of work for that east wing and the cafe for months now, and we still don't have anything from them. They don't seem to want to hand anything over. So again, we've had to go with our consultants and create our own scope of work, which will then get presented to the insurance company, and then it'll be up to them whether they accept what we say or they're disagree, and it goes to an umpire. That east wing, was very, very badly heat and smoke damaged. There was no fire separation doors between it and the cafe, which is the building that was actually on fire. So it's a bit of a bone of contention as to whether that building is salvageable, or if it's even cost effective to salvage it. For the few people that have been inside, you would know why. Any contractor or anyone that I've taken in there seems to agree that it would be way easier and better to knock it down and rebuild. But ultimately, the insurance company is the one who writes the check, and they're not necessarily in agreement. So what's happening in that east wing right now, it's getting gutted on the inside down to the studs so that it can be inspected by engineers again, and then they can assess the nature of the structure and anything else that may or may not be wrong with it. And then hopefully once it's gutted to the studs, and the engineers can look inside to determine if in fact it's going to be salvageable to rebuild on, or if it's potentially structurally not sound and will have to be knocked down. So that is what's happening with the east wing. Having said that, even if the insurance company says, or if an engineer signs off that the structure is salvageable, which there's a big question mark there, ultimately it's our decision as to whether we want to rebuild it or not. But at the end of the day, the costs come from the payment comes from the insurance company, and they're going to pay for the minimum that they can. That's clear. Their job is to write the smallest check possible. They're not there to help us, unfortunately, in my opinion. And that's the battle we're dealing with right now. On a side note there, after the fire, just a note worth hearing is that power was shut down by the firefighters to the whole main chalet complex because it was dangerous. And power was actually off, and it has been off in that east wing since the fire. It's still off, and it was off in the west wing, for I think a month. So all the pipes and everything inside froze. There's water damage all over the place. And the other side note is that the water comes from a water hut, goes into the east wing, and is then distributed to other parts of the chalet, the cafe, the west wing, and our outdoor water stations. So we actually have no ability to get water right now because the flow goes through that east wing structure and out from there. So just another complication, as there are many, but until we figure out what's going on with that east wing, we can't actually turn water back on to the west wing or any of the outdoor hose bibs. So all options are still on the table in terms of what is going to be happening with that main chalet. We could potentially rebuild what was there. The east wing could get gutted to the studs and put back together with a similar structure in the middle as to what was there. Or we may end up rebuilding something different altogether. The east wing could get knocked down. But we need more information from the insurance company before we can make an informed decision as to what we are going to do. So that's from the insurance side of things. Just so you also know, the point of me saying a lot of these things and a couple more things I'm mentioning is just to understand why things are taking as long as they are. Nothing's moving as fast as we would like. And I often hear people think, well, geez, why haven't you started rebuilding yet? So everything I'm telling you is just to let you know these are the reasons why we haven't started rebuilding yet. It's a lot of this is out of our control. The County of Simcoe requires a D4 study to be completed and approved before permits will be issued for whatever we decide to rebuild. That is because of our proximity to the landfill. So any property within a 500-meter radius of the landfill or a landfill requires a D4 study for any sort of building purposes. It's basically an environmental study. They have to check some groundwater contamination levels, methane levels in the ground, all that good stuff. We've actually have a consulting firm, another consulting firm on board with us who is completing that D4 study for us. They have essentially done their portion of the study. What happens after they've done their portion of the study, it gets submitted to the county for peer review. Basically, that peer review is another consulting firm that the County of Simcoe hires to review the report that was done by our consulting firm. And then if everything looks good, it goes to council for approval. So a timeline on that, council meets once a month. So once we get our report into the county's consultants, I've been told they will rush things for us. So let's say it's going to take them a week to review our D4 study. And then based on the timing of the council meetings, it could take, a week to a month before it gets to council for approval. We don't foresee any issues with that, but that's the process with regards to that. The one other complicating factor, the middle building, the cafeteria building, which is now gone, it was home to all of the septic controls for the entire main chalet. Now, the septic controls were part of our septic system, which is actually governed by the Ministry of the Environment. So we have a Minister of the Environment regulated septic system. As such, any changes to a Ministry of the Environment septic system spark an immediate review. So since the controls were gone, it sparks an immediate review. So it can be a bit lengthy dealing with the Ministry of the Environment. We have another consulting firm dealing with the septic issues in the Ministry of the Environment, helping us navigate that process. In addition to just the review of the septic system, another complicating factor was that the insurance company's preferred demolition contractors for the cafeteria building did not take the required protective measures when demolishing that middle building, and they actually potentially could have damaged the septic holding tanks that are behind the cafe. And we are also including that in the CC Tatum, who is our consultant's review of the septic with the MOE. So a few other complicating factors there. So when we talk about what can be done and when, you can see that there are many factors at play here, and it's a little premature to assume anything. So we have to make sure we get all of the necessary information and be as educated as we can before jumping to any conclusions or rushing to assume that we can or cannot do anything. So that's where we're at right now. In the meantime, while we are figuring out what is happening with the main chalet, status of D4 studies, the septic review, what is the scope of work from the insurance company, what are they going to give us, what are they not. So in the meantime, we are taking the necessary steps to be open for bike season and potentially beyond in alternative ways. If you have been out to Hardwood recently, you'll see renovations have started on what used to be the wax building. That's going to become our guest services building for the summertime with some retail components, as well as bike service area, some grab and go snacks, etc. So that wax building, we're going to have to come up with a new name for it, is where customers are going to go, when they come to Hardwood. That'll be their first point of contact. We are also getting a custom sea container that will be situated right beside the wax building / guest services building, and that will house our full Cannondale rental fleet of mountain bikes. The house, I'm calling it the house, or the old performance center, is also undergoing a renovation. It will be the headquarters for our staff, so people actually have a place to go to work. And as well, the main level and the basement, where there'll be programming spaces and storage spaces and multi-use spaces. In addition, a large tent structure will be in place just outside of the wax building / guest services building. It is intended as basically a day lodge type space, a dry sheltered area for the public to come with tables and chairs inside of it. And then the last piece is that we do expect or hope to get the West Wing back at some point, but we're not sure of the timing yet. It may not be for the start of the bike season, but I certainly hope to have it back in some fashion at some point during the summer. It may not have the use of the washrooms inside of it because the complicating factor of the septic and the water flow is still there, but at the very least, we should have some indoor usable space there at some point this bike season. We will not have our own food and beverage services because we have no kitchen, but we have partnered with a third-party food and beverage partner who will be providing food and beverage for all of our operations. So from day to day to special events to programs. So that will be covered off, and pretty excited about that. I think we'll be able to give some new and interesting offerings through that third-party vendor. So as we look forward to the summer with that plan, as far as we're concerned, all summer events and programs are a go as they would have been. We will have a full rental fleet, Cannondale rental fleet, with high performance demos as well. Inside we'll have select retail offerings. Food and beverage will be available. So we feel pretty good about the summer operations. It's going to look a little different, but ultimately everything that we usually deliver will be there. If we have to, looking further down the road, we will use a similar strategy for the winter, but it is too soon to tell. And the goal is obviously to be rebuilt in a new facility for the ski season next year. But just know that if that's not possible, we will still have all the offerings that we had before. It just may look a little bit different. So that is my update. And I think now I have a few pre-written questions here that I'm going to ask, and then feel free to ask any questions of me that you want. So the first question I have here is mountain bike pass refunds.
Because the winter people will receive them. So the question was, will the mountain bike people?
So I suppose, if someone signed up for a mountain bike season's pass for this coming summer, and for some reason they don't want to utilize it, then yes, we will refund it. But as I mentioned in my update, there really isn't anything we're not going to have that we wouldn't have had. But of course, if for some reason you're not happy with what we're offering this summer, we will absolutely refund your mountain bike season pass.
Riding.
Next question about riding until dusk. Will we have that? Yes. Again, this summer, in terms of what we're offering, will be the same as what we've offered last summer. So trails will still be open until dusk on a self-serve sort of option. That will still be in place. So you can still ride until dusk just like you did last year. No problems.
And winter early bird passes.
Yes, winter early bird passes for next year. We're just working through some of the insurance sort of business interruption components of this. But yes, there will be some sort of an early bird pass, and we just haven't released it yet. Don't worry, we won't just exclude it from you. It may get extended further so that people can take advantage of that early bird pricing for longer. So it will be available. We're just trying to work through some things before we put it out there to the public. But don't fear, you'll be able to get that early bird pricing. So those were the questions I had on my list. If anyone out there has any questions you want to ask, go ahead. Otherwise, that is the update. Okay, well, I don't see any questions coming, so either I did a really good job or you're just not coming up with your questions now. You can always, if you think of something later on, feel free to email us and we'll continue to try to keep you updated. It's one of the few things we do have control of is communicating with everyone, and we appreciate your patience. And we'll be leaning on a lot of you, our partners and friends, as we go through this. But I feel pretty good about coming out the other side even better than we were before. So we'll see you on the trails. Thanks, guys.